Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alison, the online piano and the online violin tutor. So this is another video on the 3 most common mistakes, issues, concerns, whatever that people comment underneath my videos on a daily basis. And I just thought I would address these things kind of in a video. I do comment back to anybody. I read all the comments on my channel as you guys know, and I do comment and reply back to anyone that has a question that I can answer, but some of those do require kind of more of a maybe a verbal explanation or even a physical demonstration. So for those of you who are new to my channel, hello and welcome. I just wanted to let you know that I have a 1 to 30 violin course that is available to download. Now this has come from my decades of teaching privately and also as a London College of Music examiner here in the UK. And it is because of this that I have put together the best home learning violin package available on the market. It is the first online interactive violin course that is available with not only videos but also books as well. So the two are very interactive, and it has been written in such a way that when you're reading the books and you're going through the videos and everything, it seems like I really am there with you in the room. My course does guarantee, absolutely guarantees, to take you from a complete beginner violinist, so you don't know anything about music, the violin, nothing, to a very decent, accomplished intermediate player. That is a very bold statement to make, but I absolutely stand by that. And if you check out the reviews of my customers that have left them in my shop underneath that book series and other books as well in my shop as well, then you will see that it is true. The proof is always in the pudding, as my music teacher always used to say to me. The links to buy the books and more information about the course will be underneath this video. And the second thing that I wanted to talk to you as well about is that a lot of you don't know that I actually have a Patreon page. Now, Patreon is a place where you can pledge monthly amounts. Depending on how much you pledge will depend on what benefits that you get. So often the more you pledge, the more benefits that you will get. But basically my Patreon page gives you access to hundreds of violin sheet music that I have arranged over not only just the years of me being on YouTube, but also really just since I've been arranging music. So since I've been teaching since I was 18 years old, so that's quite a long time ago, and all the music that I've kind of accumulated and arranged over over the years of me being on YouTube, which I've been on YouTube since 2011. So there is, I think there's around, off the top of my head, around 800 sheets of music. So it really is an unlimited resource of sheet music, and there is no other place like it on the internet where you can get so much music that has been arranged for the violin for just so little money. You can cancel your membership at any time, but you will get access to that, as well as violin backing tracks that go with some of the music. Not all of the music has backing tracks, but some of them do. Sometimes I will write blog posts and put extra videos up. So just a few little extra bits and bobs. So I'll put a link to Patreon underneath so you can check that out if you want to. So the first thing that I'm gonna talk about is the violin not being in tune. So this is just more of a kind of a common mistake that people generally tend to make. Now, each time you play the violin, you should attune your violin. If you've got a student quality violin, this is where you might struggle a little bit, because you'll find that the student quality violins, they really are just not great violins at all, for several reasons. I kind of appreciate that you don't want to spend a lot of money on something that you know that you might not like, but then you get yourself into a vicious cycle where you can't tune it, it sounds awful, the violin just sounds awful anyway, so you sound awful, you feel like you're not progressing, you don't want to practice, and it kind of sort of goes on from there. But then I appreciate you don't want to be spending $200-300 on something that you might not like. Renting is an option to kind of get over that. That's if the financial situation is a problem for you, but going with a cheap violin is never really the answer, because you end up with so many issues that you just can't solve them. And the biggest one with a cheap violin, apart from the sound being really not that great at all and the bridges being practically flat, so you'll be hitting all the other strings anyway, but the biggest problem is that people cannot tune them. And I see this question all the time. People say they just can't tune them. They say that they can't move their pegs any further forward or backwards, whatever, or they'll move their pegs and the strings will snap off and break. And that's a very, very concerning issue, I feel, and very troublesome. But it goes hand in hand with buying a cheap violin. So, you know, the old saying goes, buy cheap, buy twice. Yeah, it is absolutely true. But, you know, if you're buying a $50 violin, you can't expect to tune it, and you won't tune it. And there's nothing you can do to really, really tune it. Even if you do manage to get a good tune on it, you'll find it will slip out of tune very, very quickly. So I'm going to show you the difference between playing a violin in tune and playing a violin out of tune. And by in tune, I mean like the strings itself. So I will be playing in tune if my ears can actually handle that as a musician. But I'm going to show you what difference it makes when the violin is not in tune. So when the violin is in tune, all your fingers are going to be going down where they're supposed to be going down, and they're going to give you the exact note that needs to be played. So the exact note that you would play on the piano. If I played an A on the piano, I'm going to be getting an A on the violin, a B on the piano, a B on the violin. Now, when your violin is out of tune, your fingers go down in the same places that you've been playing them, and the sound is going to sound off to you. So either you're just going to think that's the new norm and just carry on with that, or you're going to compensate with your fingers, which you do not want to be going down that rabbit hole. So if your B on the A string was there, on that yellow dot there, but your string is out of tune, you're either going to be compensating to make that note a B, either there or moving it forward to be there. So you don't want to be compensating, because then, you know, where is that B? Is it there? Is it there? Is it there? So next time you've got your violin in tune, all of that is just going to be completely messed up. So that was that playing in tune. Now I'm going to slightly detune my violin, and you'll be able to hear the difference now. Now usually your violin would be flat, so I've put my violin flat. So this is how my violin sounds now. I don't even know what those notes are. I don't even want to think about what those notes are. So I'm going to try and play the same thing again. And try not to let my ears and fingers get confused and do what they want to do, because I know my fingers are going to want to move them in the right place, but I'm going to try really hard not to. So this would be representative of what you guys would be doing. So I feel like, because you're kind of starting out as newbie musicians, this isn't the kind of thing that's going to affect you. You're just going to be focusing on the music. If it says an open A, you're going to play an open A. If it says you need to play an F, you're going to play an F. So you will just be, you know, too bogged down with the notes you're going to be playing, and you won't be listening to what's going on here. And then you can hear the difference and see really how detrimental this is going to be. So this is me playing on a very badly untuned violin, something that I would never do. So that was quite bad. Maybe my strings wouldn't be that much out of tune. That's probably a little bit closer, so that might be more how your violin might be, and you might listen to that and think that sounds right. So if I do that again. So the A string and the E string are actually pretty well in tune. It's the D that isn't in tune. So when I did so when I went down onto the D string, so when I did that part there, that was the bit that didn't sound in tune. So you're going to get some of it that's going to sound in tune and some of it that's going to sound out of tune. And it's really going to put you off, because then you're going to be thinking, there's something not quite right with that. My fingers are in the wrong place. And you're not even going to think that it's actually the violin that needs to be tuned. So guys, you've got to make sure that your violin is tuned all the time. And again, I do have a video on exactly how to tune your violin. I go into so much detail, and I will link that underneath as well. So if you want to know how to tune the violin, that video is directly underneath. Okay, the second mistake, or the second common question that people always say, is that they hit other strings. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I do have a video on this that I did a few weeks ago which goes into details, but basically that could be a number of reasons. Mostly it's going to be about the angle of the arm. I do talk about this quite often. I'm like a broken record really. So it is about the angle of the arm here, and also about the bridge as well. Now you're going to get a flatter bridge on those cheap violins. So anything under $100, you're already fighting a losing battle. It doesn't really matter how good you are with the arm. You could be perfect, but if your violin doesn't have a properly angled bridge, then you've got no hope. And again, having a cheap violin, that is one of the problems. A cheap violin will come with a very poorly structured bridge that just hasn't had the time spent on it that it needs to be, and those violins don't tune very well. The two main elements that you need on a violin, and trust me, you can change the strings all number of times to the most expensive strings in the world. It will not matter if the violin is flat, if the bridge is flat. And quite often with those cheaper kind of, we're talking sort of 50 to anything less than $100 really, these $50 Chinese kind of violins, the really cheap ones that you sort of get from Amazon that are no particular brand, just a sort of a made up random brand name. Some of them do expect you to carve the bridge, but seriously, who knows how to do that? I don't even know how to do that. You're not even necessarily carving the bridge that way, but you've got to thin the bridge down as well. The bridges are so thick. So, this is something that a violin luthier would spend their career learning how to do. So how you guys are supposed to be doing that with, some sandpaper and hoping for the best, I really don't know. It's not like you've got kind of a wood vise sitting in your workshop somewhere, is it? So, the cheaper you go, the more poorly set up the violin is going to be. And if your bridge is just not angled well, then, that's not going to bode well for you. So the only solution I can think to that is take your violin to a violin luthier, but it is a bit cost prohibitive to do that, because you're going to be paying them maybe $200, $150, $200 to fix something that you only spent $50 on, and it's just not going to be worth it. The other way is to get a better violin. If financially that's not viable for you, then maybe even think about renting a violin. You could rent a violin for maybe 4 to 6 months for what it would cost you for a $50 violin, and you'll know by the end of kind of month 1 or 2 whether you're going to carry on with it or not, and then that's up to you if you want to buy something better or carry on renting. But aside from the bridge, it is all to do with the level of the arm. I'm not going to go into detail on that because I already have a highly detailed video that I will link underneath this video, and that talks about the level of the arm and where you need to bow so that you don't hit other strings. But that is the two main reasons why you're hitting those strings: a poorly angled bridge for whatever reason, usually because the violin is too cheap, and also you as well. It's your arm level. So which one is which? Very difficult for me to say, obviously, without knowing, but those are going to be pretty much the two only culprits for hitting other strings. Okay, and the third, maybe not so common, because I do have more kind of beginner violinists on my channel than more advanced, but those of you who are a little bit more advanced and are playing in third position, a lot of people struggle in third position to get a good, decent tone. Now, third position, fourth position, fifth position is very, very difficult to get a good tone out, and it is largely going to depend on your violin. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that you've got a decent violin for this. So You're not going to be able to do this on a cheap $50 violin. Forget it, it's not going to happen. You can't even stop hitting the strings, let alone getting a good sound in third position. So I'm going to go ahead and assume you've got something decent, and these tips will work if you've got a decent violin, and I would hope so by the time you're confident or you're advanced enough that you're learning third position. So one thing that you can do in third position is to make sure that your fingers are fully depressed on the string. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that your fingers are firmly enough on the string. So you don't really need to press too hard on the violin to sort of get a good sound. You know, people sort of say, do I have to press down hard? But it's one of those things that you just know. You just know how hard you need to push your fingers down. Too light and you're not going to get a sound at all. But it's never a problem. It's like saying, my rosin, I know how much to grip it before I might drop it out of my hand. How do I know that? I don't know, I just know that. The same as breathing and blinking. It's just something I do automatically, and I just know. So you will know how hard to put your fingers down on the fingerboard. That isn't going to be an issue. But when you are in third position, you need to work 2 or 3 times harder than that, or it is just going to sound kind of... It's going to sound a little bit too wispy rather than... The higher up the fingerboard you go, the softer, the sweeter, and the more sonorous it is as well. And you can use that to your advantage. If you're playing a particularly soft and sweet piece of music, then you can go into third position and manipulate some of the notes that you could very happily play in first position, but you could manipulate the sound of that and play it in third position to create a whole different piece. So that's like a whole video on its own, really. But third position can be used to change the colour, just to do a complete 180 on a piece of music just by putting it in third position. So again, that's something completely separate, but you want to make sure that your fingers are depressed quite hard on the string, because you're going to find that your fingers are going to slip. Now you are going to have to adjust where your hand is as well, so your thumb needs to come all the way up here. It's not a problem, but it needs to come up there, and that's when you're going to need to start kind of having a better, a nice confident grip up here as well. But you do need to push a little harder, not too much harder, but you will need to push a little harder to make sure that you are fully depressing that string. The second thing you can do is make sure that you are pressing with the complete pad of your finger and not with the side, the tip, or anything like that. You want to make sure that the kind of fattest part of your finger is on that string. None of this silly nonsense on the side or just ever so slightly. Those fingers need to be right over those strings. I can't really show you too well because I don't think it's really going to be coming off in the video, but you'll know what I mean when you're playing. So making sure that your fingers are quite firmly pressed to the point where when I let them go, you can see the depression in my finger just there. I don't know if that's, I get my face out of the way. I don't know if that's focusing or not, but you can see the depression mark in my finger because I've been pressing quite hard. And actually also, I don't know if that's going to focus or not, you can actually see where those strings are on my fingers as well. So the strings are right in the middle of the pad, so I've got maximum sound capacity. And do you know what, it doesn't even matter if my fingers are spreading over and hitting any of the strings beside it, because I'm not going to be bowing those strings. I'm only going to be bowing on the A string. So I just want to play the A string, put my fingers over that, and it doesn't matter if the kind of the edge of my finger or halfway down my finger is hitting the E string. Doesn't matter because I'm not playing that anyway. The other thing to do is to make sure that you're playing with a nice, good, firm, flat bow. Unless you're playing something very particular or something that kind of requires it, or you are particularly an advanced player and you've got all this kind of thing nailed down, I would suggest that you play with a flat bow, not a fat bow, a flat bow. The reason being is that if you're playing with a flat bow, you're playing with all of the bow. If you're playing with the side of the bow, you're playing with some of the bow hairs. So your flat bow is playing with all of the bow hairs. So you're going to get a much fatter, thicker, fuller, wider sound. If you're playing with only half of the bow hair, that's sort of the very edge of it, and the other half you're not, then obviously the sound is going to be a lot softer, maybe a little bit more sweeter. So it depends what you're doing, but I would suggest if you are new to third position that you play with a flat bow. So if I demonstrate to you playing with only half the bow, so if I tilt the bow and lightly pressing my fingers down, I'm going to try and do that best I can, then you will hear the kind of sound that you're going to get. So it's a very willowy, wispy kind of sound. Now to put the fingers down fully and completely over the middle of the string. So my fingers are spread over the entire string, not half on, half off with the fingernail on it. The fattest part, the middle part of my finger is going to be right over the center of that string, and I'm going to be pushing down a little bit harder, and I'm going to be playing with a flat bow, and then you'll hear the power and difference. So if I wanted to change that slightly, I can do that by tilting the bow, but I'm always keeping my fingers. In fact, you can hear, that's how much I'm actually pressing down. When I'm pressing them, hopefully that's coming out on camera, but as I'm pressing them, you can actually, you can hear it. You can hear the string, and you can hear the kind of the hit of my finger on the wood. So that's how much those fingers are going down with that much pressure. So yeah, you can play with a flat bow and you can tilt it, but you only want to tilt it if you've nailed the finger part up the top there. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this video has been helpful, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out the links of my 1 to 30 violin course, 100% downloadable, and my Patreon page, which is going to give you access to hundreds of sheets of violin music that I've been adding in over the course of my musical career, as well as being on YouTube. So thank you for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye.